Hello there, I'm Michael Cantow, and today I'll guide you through this tutorial on DockMed, a server architecture that makes building and deploying applications simple. Today, we'll focus on creating a task management application and deploying it to a live website with HTTPS. DockMed was originally designed as the server infrastructure for my thesis project, Thoughtline.org. Thoughtline is a mental wellness research application that explores the potential efficacy of audio files for various mental wellness symptoms. While DockMed was initially created with health-related applications in mind, it has proven to be a versatile server foundation that can be used for a wide range of applications. In this tutorial, we'll delve into how DockMed can be utilized to deploy a task management application. As part of DockMed, you'll find some ready-to-use code from the early stages of the Thoughtline project. If you're an experienced developer, feel free to pick and choose what you want to keep. However, for the purposes of this tutorial, we'll make use of the settings and authentication features as they provide a solid foundation for our task management app. Throughout this tutorial, we'll walk you through the process of setting up your own server infrastructure with DockMed, integrating Django, and leveraging the authentication features inherited from Thoughtline. Don't worry if you're new to this. We'll break it down into manageable steps, making it easy to follow along. And guess what? We'll even show you how to deploy your application on a production server so you can share it with others and put it to practical use. By the end of this tutorial, you'll have the skills to create and launch your own applications using DockMed, tailored to your specific needs. So, let's dive in and unlock the potential of DockMed. To get started, you want to come to the Wellness Server Starting Foundation repo available here at Bitbucket. I'll include the repo link in the description. In this part of the tutorial, we'll clone the repo and get ready to start working on the tasks application. We'll want to copy the URL. Go to VS Code and start a new terminal. We'll cd into Documents. We'll run git clone the Bitbucket repo. We'll want to open the folder in VS Code. Should be the master folder. So we click select folder. And we'll see these files have been cloned in. We'll say yes, we trust the author. We'll get our terminal back. We'll need to create a new repository so that our production machine can clone our code that we're working on locally. To do this, we'll click the plus icon on GitHub, new repository, and we'll fill out some of these fields. And we'll want to now change the remote URL to a new repo that we just created. So we'll do git remote set URL origin and we'll get the demo repo. And we'll see now all of our files exist in the demo repo. So we're going to want to head back into VS Code, and now we'll get the application up and running in its local mode. So if we open up the README, and on Windows, we do Control-Shift-V to get the preview of the README. There's some description about what the DockMed server does and overview of all the files and the 3 different modes that DockMed runs in. So we have local front-end development. We'll use your host machine's Python installation. Docker dev build is going to be the local version of the Docker build, and Docker prod build is going to be for production deployments. So we're going to start with this local front-end development. So if we scroll down, we'll see local front-end development instructions. So clone repo, prepare to set up. We already did that, so we move on to step 2. So we'll run pip install virtual env, and we'll see what that said. Downloaded no problem. Now we're going to want to create a virtual environment called VNV. Python is not recognized, so we're just going to want to run Py instead. And on Mac, you're going to want to do Python 3. So now to get it running, we can do vnv/scripts/activate, or it looks like it's still cooking. Yeah, it should be good to go now. That will activate it, and we'll see right here that that means that our virtual environment is activated. So now we're going to want to install the requirements into the virtual environment. So we'll just run pip install -r requirements.txt. It's going to pull this requirements folder in and install them. Once our requirements are installed, now we're going to want to run this migrate command to set up the database. Just going to run a SQLite 3 database on the back end. So we hit Python manage.py migrate, and we see this db.sqlite 3 was created, and that'll automatically connect in with the application. And now we will run the local development server. So we'll run Python manage.py run server. And now if we check out our local host, just go to 127.0.0.1 port 8000. And now we see the early stage of thoughtline.org up and running. So thoughtline.org has a bunch of about pages. We can create files, we can log in, create accounts, listen to files by category. Lots of cool stuff you can do with this. So in this tutorial, we're not going to get too much into Thoughtline. We're mostly just going to talk about how you can work with the DockMed platform. But if you're interested in learning more, there's more details in the README. Now note that this was an early version of Thoughtline. It's going to look a little bit different than thoughtline.org actually does. But if we scroll down to site management, you'll see some of the additional things you need to do to get actual Thoughtline up and running. But next we'll move on to pruning most of the Thoughtline files and getting ready to build our own application from scratch. So going through some of the files we have here, audio app is essentially going to be all files related to the Thoughtline server in particular. So we'll go ahead and just get rid of the audio app because we're not going to need it right now. Audio server is we're definitely going to need, so we're going to end up renaming that for our new application, but we're going to want to keep that. Nginx we're not going to use till later in the tutorial, but this is going to be used for the production build, so we'll keep that. Testing is definitely going to be useful to come in here and see how to do some unit integration testing with Django. But for the purpose of this tutorial, we'll skip over this and get rid of that. But you should definitely check that out in the original repo if you're going to be working with this extensively on a prolonged project. So Docker ignore, we're not going to need to touch. These files hold some environment variables that we're not going to deal with right now. If you git ignore the database, these Docker compose files specify the two different versions of the Docker build. Docker file is used to define the container that the WSGI server runs in. Entry point.sh is a shell script that we're going to run when we boot up the production instance. Init certbot is going to be used to generate some certificates. Manage.py, we don't need to touch. README you should go ahead and customize for your application. And in this tutorial, we'll just kind of leave a obtuse requirements file with what we had for Thoughtline. But when you're doing this on your own application, you want to come in and customize this for whatever you're working with. So now we'll go ahead and we'll close out these editors and we'll rename this for the demo project. So we'll just rename to demo project server. And we go into this, there's some things we got to change. So we got to go into WSGI. We'll see audio server. We're going to want to change that to demo project server or wherever you have whatever your project name is. ASGI is not going to be used in this. This would be used for like Django channels, but we'll just go ahead and keep that in place in case we need it for whatever reason down the road. If we go into settings, we're going to want to just Control F, the audio server and change that to our demo project server, wherever that pops up. Another thing we're going to need to do is under installed apps, we have the audio app still installed, and we're going to get rid of all the hotline stuff. So we'll get rid of that. And we should be good to go. Templates. This would all be generated by the default template generation script, but these template context processors give you some templates or some template variables available across templates. So these were specific for the wellness server, so we'll go ahead and get rid of those. We can leave all that as is. Okay, so if we try now rebooting up the demo server, no module named audio server. So let's see where we missed that. Another thing, the way we just deal with this is Control Shift F, audio server. If we want to manage a Pi audio server settings, we want to change that to demo project server. And we can see that we're going to need to make some changes later when we do production, but we'll deal with that in a little bit. Now, if we hit run server, still broken. So we figured out where this other error was. So we need to go into settings, and under installed apps, we needed to get rid of this testing.apps because we just deleted that folder. So now if we try to run the server again from audio app.views, so the other place we need to go into is URLs. .views, we'll keep the create account login. From audio app.views, we got rid of all of the audio app functionality, so we'll get rid of that. So this includes all the home URLs we're getting rid of, chatbot, listen URLs, playlist URLs, and admin. So we're going to keep this because this gives us access to the built-in Django admin. So go ahead and get rid of all of that. Save. And now we should be up and running again. And now this file doesn't exist because we just got rid of that. Likewise, the home page shouldn't exist. But we noticed that this 404 error page is getting returned. So the actual server is up and running. So now we'll just go ahead and commit these changes. So we'll say pruned thought line components, commit sync changes. So now we did keep the register and login pages. So we have all these templates here for those. We're going to want to get rid of this audio player.js. And we'll go ahead and get rid of actually all these JavaScript files and just start this from scratch. And that looks fine. Images, we'll go ahead and get rid of all these. I'll just go ahead and delete the folder and make a new folder. Image folder, and we'll keep the main.css file, but we'll go ahead and clear that out. Now for templates, we have this base template that we can use. So this is going to be the link to, like, this will be the little icon that pops up. Like if you go on a website, this icon right here. So if you want to include an icon, you come here and specify that, but we'll get rid of that for our tutorial. We're importing the main.css file, untitled page. You can keep all these scripts that we're importing. We'll get rid of all this business. We can go ahead and just get rid of the head too, or we'll go ahead and get rid of all the top nav code, and we get rid of that too. So now we have just these scripts that we port in the head, pretty basic body code. We'll get rid of this little copyright thing at the bottom. We'll say instead of audio server, we'll call it our demo project server base template. So now registration will inherit from all of these. So if we go to our local host, again, 404 not found, but we should still have our login functionality. So now we have like super basic login information that we can put in. So if we create an account, we do like test user, test user, email address, test user at Gmail, password, we'll do demo password, great. Now this redirected us to the home page, but we should be able to now log in as a user, but we are authenticated, so it's automatically redirecting us out of the login page. But yeah, now we're ready to continue and actually get started putting some stuff on this page. So now we're back in VS Code and we're going to start working on this new tasks application we're building. So we'll get started by doing some work in this demo project server folder. Typically, we don't want this folder to do all too much. We'll want to go ahead and create different apps that have extended functionalities. But given the scale of this website, we'll go ahead and utilize this folder to do a couple things. So if we look at the views folder or views file in here, we have a function to handle logins and also create an account. We'll also go ahead and create a home page render function, which accepts the request. And this will return the render of the request. Call this index.html. And so then we have a view function that will handle our home page. For views, we're also going to want to, or for URLs, we're also going to want to copy in this homepage render. So we'll want to add a path that goes to our homepage render. And we can also give this a name. So we'll call name equal index. Make sure we get a comma there. And now we need to create our index.html file. So index.html, we are going to want to have that extends base.html. And then we can work with block content. And we'll want to end the block content. And we'll do H1 of the tasks application homepage. We'll just put a little description underneath saying this is our suite homepage. So I'm being super vanilla with all the styling on this app, but you can go ahead and put in like whatever content you want in here and style it however you want. So now we have a model, or we have a view, we have a URL, and we have a template. So if we open up our local host and refresh, we see our task application homepage. This is our suite homepage. So what we did here is we extend this base.html template that we just worked on and define this block content. So if we go back in here and we commented that, or we'd actually need to get rid of this whole block, and we just now extend base.html and we reload this. See this welcome, this is the demo project server base template. So that's what gets loaded when we don't define this block content, whatever we put in as the default. But in this case, now we have this, our task application homepage. And we put that back in and reload. So now we have a simple homepage for the website. Okay, so for this part of the tutorial, we're now going to go ahead and build some task functionality. So we'll go into our terminal and run Python manage.py start app tasks. And now we'll see that this new folder task popped up. So we're also going to need to go into settings.py under installed apps and add in tasks. Tell the application that that directory is a app. And now we can go ahead and start filling in some of these definitions. So we'll start with the model. So we'll create a task model, which inherits from models.model. It will give it a title attribute, which will be a character field. And we need to give that a max length, which we'll say 200. We'll give it a description. Be a models.text field. And created that via models.datetime field. And we'll auto now add true. We'll set it to whatever the time is when we create the object. And completed will be a Boolean field. And we'll give it a default value of false. We'll also go ahead and define a string method, which will return the title. Okay, so now we are going to go ahead and make some views so that we can interact with that model. So we'll go ahead and from .models import task. So now we have access to that task model. So now we'll write a function to list all the tasks that exist. So we do tasks equal tasks.objects.all. Will get us a list of all the tasks, and we'll return render of the request. We'll go to list.html, and we'll do this keyword arguments of tasks goes to the task query set, so that in the view we're about to make, we can reference this task query set. We're also going to want to have the ability to create a task. So we'll do task create. We'll take in the request. So if the request method is post, we'll say our title equals request dot post of title. Description equals request dot post of description. And then to create the task, we'll do task referencing our task class dot objects dot create title and description equal description. And then we'll return, we're going to want to do a redirect here. So also want to import redirect. So return redirect of the task list. And if the request is not a post. We'll want to render some form to create the task. So we'll do return render request create.html, and we don't need any keyword arguments. We'll also give you ability to show some task, like click into a task and see more detailed information. So we'll do define task detail of the request and a task ID. So we'll get the actual task with the ID, and we'll return a render of the request detail.html, and our task object goes to the task query result. We'll want the ability to mark a task as complete. So that'll take in a request and a task ID. So that will need to get the task that we're looking for. Objects.get ID equals task ID. Set task.completed is true. Then we'll run task.save. And then we'll return a redirect to the list or task list URL name. And then, oh yeah, we also are going to need to be able to delete the task. So task delete request and task ID. So again, we'll get the task. Task ID, we'll do task.delete, and we'll redirect you back to the task list. Okay, so now we have the model that will store some of these tasks and a couple of view functions to interact with that model. Next, we need to go ahead and create some templates so that we can actually see and interact with this data. So within the tasks folder, we'll create another folder called templates. And within the templates, we'll start creating we actually need another folder called tasks. And then within that, we start creating our templates. So first we'll do list.html. We go to list.html. Again, we're going to want to extend base.html, find block content. We'll need to end block content. And for this, we can just iterate over all our tasks. So for task in tasks, and then on the other end of this, we're going to need to end it. So we'll go ahead and just do that now. And for give this h3 of the task dot title, or I think we did lowercase title h3. So we'll do a p the task dot description. Now we can also do some logic here. So we'd say like if task dot completed, and we'll give it an else. Then we'll end the if. So if it's completed, we'll just put a paragraph saying it's a completed task. And if it's not completed, we'll do a tag where we can go to complete it, and we'll give it an href where we will use this URL of I believe we called it task complete. And we'll also need to pass it the task.id. And then we can end the if. And then we're also going to want a button to view details. And that needs a href to, oh, no, we forgot some, got to put some percent signs in. Put the percent signs in here too. And that'll go to URL of task detail. We'll pass it the task ID. We'll just copy that because we also need a delete button. So task delete needs the task ID. Call that delete. And then after the for loop, we're also going to want a create new task button. And we can give that an href of URL task create that. Yeah, we don't need HTML in there. So that's our list template. Now we'll go ahead and create the create .html. So create.html, we'll just give it a form, which method equal post, and the action will be to a URL, which is create or task create. And we have to include this CSRF token. And now we'll populate some form fields. So label, title. Then we'll give it input for that. Type will be text. Name will be title. And then we're going to repeat this for the description. Put that to the cap. And then we'll probably make this a text area. Try to close it out. And we want to give this a name. Description. And then we'll give it a button. The type is submit. And we'll do create task. So now we can view and create tasks. We also want to be able to do details on them. So detail.html, give this a heading, which will be the task title. P will be the task.description. So if it's completed, P saying it's complete. Otherwise, do a anchor tag to complete the task. Will be href goes to the URL task complete. And that needs the task ID. And then we can end the if. Did we forget to do? Yeah, we also forgot to extend base.html. Block content. And block content. Put that back in. We'll go ahead and just copy that. Paste that and put this into the block content. And then we'll also throw in a link back to the task list. With a link. Okay. So I think that we are good on this. So we have list.html, create.html. Yeah, so that should be good on that. So now we need to put some URLs in to direct requests to the appropriate view function, which will then query the model and then also render one of these templates. So for bigger projects, we could build another URL file in this app, but we'll just go into our main URL file and import all the views from the tasks.views. Just important everything. We'll specify these are tasks, URLs. So do path tasks / list will be the task list name equal the task list. To be task create name equal task create path tasks detail. We'll use the task detail function and give it name task detail. Now task detail also needs to take in a integer of the task ID. And now we also need to do the complete and delete, which will be pretty similar to this. So we'll copy this. So detail will replace with complete. Task complete. Delete. Task delete. And we'll make sure we replace these names. So we should be good to go now. We'll run the server. And if we refresh, so we can try now one of these URLs. So we'll go to task list. So a couple other small changes we need to make. We had a typo here. Have to make that base.html. That should be extends instead of extend. This should similarly be extends instead of extend. And then we also need to put that this is in the task directory. Tasks plural. So everywhere we render a template, we'll need to go in and fix that. But so now we should just run Python, or let's clear this. So Python manage.py make migrations, create the model task, and then Python manage.py migrate. We'll run the migrations. We do Python manage.py run server. We're now up and running. So if we go to our localhost task list, we can now create a new task. Food title, my first task, and create the task. So now we see my first task. So it's complete. We can complete it. It now says completed or view the details. Back to task list. Delete it. So super simple little task list. We can add some style to it to make it look better. The next part, we'll go over how to add authentication on top of all of this. So now we're going to go ahead and add some user authentication onto this app. So we'll go ahead and close out all of our editors. So the first thing we're going to do is go into our base template. And right here is our top nav. So we're going to just paste in this little snippet that shows if the user is authenticated. So if the user is authenticated, this is just a tag that will log them out, give them a button to log out. And if they are not authenticated, then they can click this button to log in. And we will go ahead and put a little style block in here saying that the authentication class is margin 0, 0, 0 auto loaded to the right. So now that we have that done, we will go into our view functions for the tasks. So we'll create a function is allowed of user. We'll return user dot groups dot filter of name equals allowed. So here we're going to make a Django group called allowed. And if a user is a member of that group, they are allowed to use the application. And if they're not, then they're not. So we're going to do two imports here. We're going to do the reverse lazy import, and we're going to do the login required import. So we're going to do at login required of login URL is reverse lazy of login. So for all of the view functions here, we're going to make sure that users are logged in, and if they're not logged in, we'll redirect them to the login page. So now we'll use this function is allowed. So if is allowed of the request user, we will allow them to access the task list. Otherwise, we will return a redirect to the home page. So we'll go ahead and propagate these out for everything. So now that we have the permissions being checked everywhere, we'll create a super user. Call it admin, and we'll do empty email address, bypass that, super user created successfully, run server again. So now we'll go into the super user admin. Admin P. So we'll go to users. We'll also create a group. We called it allowed. And we'll save the group. And then we'll go to our users. We'll go to our admin user, and we'll add them to the allowed group. We'll save that, and we'll view the site. So we see we're logged in as the admin user. And if we go to task list, we're allowed to do all these things. Now, if we log out and log in, let's say we create an account, test user, test user, test user, demo password, great. We'll get logged in. We go to the task list, we'll get permissions denied. So yeah, now we are ready to move on to deployment. We now have a nice, simple task page where we can create an arbitrary number of users to all access the task page and prevent foreign users from getting in. So now that our application is ready for deployment, we are going to make sure that the local Docker development build works, and then we'll work on the production Docker build. So to get Docker running, we're going to open up Docker Desktop. So you can just go to search Docker Desktop and download it. And by opening Docker Desktop, the Docker stuff will all spin up. But we do have some edits we skipped over before. So we'll again look for audio server. So we want to change this to the demo project server. So demo project server WSGI, we'll copy that. We'll fix that there. We can ignore the README. For this, the Nginx conf, we'll change audio server to demo project server. And we want to pass that to demo project server. And then we're also going to change this for the dev Nginx configuration file. Make sure we save that. Paste that in. And then there's also some changes we're going to want to make for the domain name. This only applies to the production environment, but we'll just go ahead and deal with this now. So we will use this domain name, multimodalinsights.com. This domain name has nothing to do with this project, but I just happen to own it. So we'll go ahead and use that, and we'll just won't deal with the www hosting, but you can see how to deal with that there. And then for CSRF trusted origins, we also need to specify that. So we'll copy our domain name and put that in there and save. So we should be good to go there. We just now need to change the Nginx comp file. So we'll do multimodalinsights.com. That's going to need to get changed. The SSL certificate location, that is. And now we should be good to go. Yep, all those come up for that. So yeah, now we have Docker Desktop up and running. So we'll run so issue we were running into before was the entry point SH permissions get messed up in Windows. It's easy to deal with this in Linux by just using a chmod, but on Windows it's a bit annoying. So we're gonna cut all that content out, delete this entry point file, create a new entry point SH file, and paste our content in. And this is gonna fix our issue because when we build a when we create a new file in Windows, the permissions will be executable by default. So we can go in command prompt and deal with it, but it's just kind of annoying. So we're not going to deal with it right now. And so just do this kind of hacky quick way. So we're running the build command right now, or we're actually running the up command with the build flag on it. And it looks like we successfully built this time. So now if we refresh port 8000, we're going to see that we don't get any response because port 8000 is only exposed internally to Docker. Instead, we got to go to 127.0.0.1 with no port number, which defaults to it's running over HTTP port 80. If it's HTTPS, it'll listen on port 43, which is where Nginx is listening. So now this is the Nginx version of the application. So one thing you may need to do, well, actually, you will definitely need to do is go into make a new terminal. And we need to migrate. I had done this beforehand to make sure that there wasn't actually an issue. So all you have to do is run this Docker compose execute web python manage.py migrate command. We'll see. I have no migrations to apply, but first time you do it, you'll see a bunch of green check marks. And if you head back to your application, everything should be working. So for the last part of this tutorial, we're going to go ahead and actually deploy this application. So I'm going to use Linode here for my hosting service, but essentially like any cloud server should work. But in Linode, you go to create Linode. We're going to choose Ubuntu 22.04 LTS. We'll go with Newark, New Jersey. For this, we can just do a shared CPU for $5 a month, and we'll cancel that after this. So I put in a password, and I think we should be able to go ahead and do the Linode. So yeah, we have now an IP address. So we can copy this address, and it's going to take a minute for this instance to boot up. But we'll go into our records here in Cloudflare. So you can also, I'm using Cloudflare, but any DNS should work. So I do already have this configured for another web server, but we'll just change this for the purposes of this tutorial. So we need an A record going to your domain name and input the IPv4 address and save that. And then if you want to check if your domain name has actually propagated out, we go to dnschecker.com, or excuse me, dnschecker.org, and run a search on your domain name. And we see this 127 IP address, which maps the content provided here. The DNS can take a while to propagate out far away, but for quick local development, it usually goes pretty quickly. So let's see if this is up and running yet. It doesn't appear to be up and running yet, but maybe just the stats aren't loaded yet. So we can now pull up a WSL window, and we're going to run this SSH command into our server. We're going to proceed with that and enter our password. And we're in. So now that we're into the machine, we'll go to our repo. And also, we actually forgot to push our changes. So just call this ready for deploy. So we'll push and sync our changes and updated just now. So now we'll copy our HTTP address for the repo, and we'll run git clone our repo, the ls. Now we can cd into demo repo, and we'll see all our files. So we could just use the docker compose.dev.yaml file to get up and running over HTTP after we do need to install Docker, but for the production, we're going to use this, which will also deal with certificates. So to install Docker, we are going to use this tutorial here. I'm going to go ahead and do a little rearranging on my browser and utilize my monitor, so I don't need to be opening and closing all these windows. But yeah, you just go to the Docker website, and the instructions are fairly easy to follow through. So we're just going to go ahead and execute them. So this first command is going to remove old versions of Docker. It doesn't look like we have any. This one's going to update apt-get. And this allows APT to work over HTTPS. Yes, we want to continue. Now we're going to add some Docker GP G keys. Just make sure you're careful to copy the instructions properly. I usually end up having to do this twice. This sets up the Docker repository. We got to update apt-get. This installs some Docker stuff. Yeah, we want to allow that. And now we'll try doing this. So we get a hello from Docker. So this means Docker's been installed properly. So just a couple more things we got to do to get up and running. First, we got to fix the permissions on our executable file. So we'll do cmod +x entry point.sh. And then we'll also do the same for init certbot.sh. Now we want to run init certbot to generate some certificates. I'll put in my email address. Yes, yes. It's requesting a certificate. And looks like that was all good there. If it couldn't kill the process, it just means that it checked if the port was in use and it wasn't. So now we can run Docker compose build, which will reference the production Docker compose file. So after we finish building this, all we need to do is run the up command and also run the database migrations. So we're just going to run a slightly different version of the up command that doesn't print any logs so that we can access the container commands. So we'll just use docker compose up -d -build. So the build is already done, so that doesn't do anything. This is all now up and running and building. We're going to want to also now run this manage.py-migrate command. So then that executed all of our migrations. And now if we go to multimodalinsights.com, we see we have our task application homepage done correctly. So now another thing you might want to do is run create super user. We call it admin. And now if we go to our website, we go to admin super user, we can log in as that, and we'll create our group. So it's called allowed, create the group, and we'll go to users, admin, and we'll add allowed to their chosen groups. We'll save that. Now, if we view site, we should be able to go to task list, create a new task. Create the task. Now we see it's up and we can do all the things we did before.